If your goal for the new year is to boost your writing, you need to know where to start. Today I have 3 tips you can use to boost your writing in the new year. Now, we're talking about writing, and I have a tip that you might not really expect. Because when you talk about writing, you would expect that I give you a tip that has something to do with writing. But my first tip is that you should actually read more. Because if you read a lot, you get some examples of what other authors and writers do in those particular types of writing. If you want to write a novel, you should of course read a lot of novels, because all of those novels have specific characteristics that those authors use in their novels, and maybe there's one that you can use in your own. If you want to write reviews, it's always very useful to read other reviews and to see what those authors do when they're reviewing something. Now, when you're reading a lot, you should read it as a writer, so make sure that you put on your writer's glasses. Because when you're reading something as a writer, you're analyzing it for its structure, its vocabulary, the language people use, maybe some idioms or nice phrases that you can use. But you're also looking at the content. What is the author doing to make the content more interesting for the reader? And maybe as a writer, you could think about choices that this particular author made. Maybe there are things in those writings that you're reading that you can use in your own writing. Of course, I'm not saying that you should steal content from other writers. I'm saying that you should look at things that these writers are doing that you could use and do in your own writings. An example could be particular adjectives that a person is using to describe something when they're reviewing something. Maybe you can look for a synonym of that particular adjective and use it as well. Whatever you do, don't steal other people's content, but analyze whatever you're reading as a writer. What made it so good that you wanted to read it yourself? Why were you drawn to that particular piece of writing? Answer those questions and then you're reading something as a writer. Another thing you could do to enhance your writing in the new year is to set particular goals for yourself. Now, I'm someone who always says that you should work with goals, because goals give you focus and goals help you get to a particular point that you want to be. Simply writing for the sake of writing is always very good, but it's also good to focus on particular elements that you want to develop. For example, if you want to use different vocabulary, it might be useful to set particular goals for yourself. What type of vocabulary do you want to use? Do you want to use vocabulary that persuades people? Do you want to use vocabulary that's more neutral, or vocabulary that really enhances your opinion? In those cases, you need to find lists of words that you can use to do this. And when you find these lists, you want to choose a few words that you can use in your writing, and then you need to make sure that you use them correctly. So setting the goal that you want to use different vocabulary already gives you some sort of roadmap or things that you need to do in order to fulfill that particular goal. Now, when you set your goal, you also want to think of success criteria. And success criteria are things that you can do or things that prove that you've done certain steps to work towards your goal. Let's take the vocabulary example again. Let's say that you want to use different vocabulary in your writings. In that case, a success criteria could be that you find synonyms for words that you use very often. You could also say that you then use the synonyms correctly. So here you have 2 success criteria that are easy to measure and easy to track: finding the list and using words correctly. If your goal is that you want to bring more focus to your writings, you could ask someone to give you feedback on the focus and the structure of your writing. Then, using that particular success criteria, you're working towards your goal because you're asking someone for feedback, you're incorporating that feedback in your next writing, and then you ask them again to see whether there is any form of improvement. In those cases, you have nice success criteria that help you work towards your goal. Now, my third tip is actually a bit obvious, and that's that you simply write more. Writing is like exercising. Practice makes perfect, and the more you do it, the easier it will become. You might want to schedule 1 or 2 moments every week, or maybe even every day, in which you write something. And you don't need to write a gazillion number of words every time. Short blogs or short journal entries are always very good to practice your writing. But it is important that when you write, you think of particular goals that you want to work on. So when you're trying to improve your writing in the new year, simply sit down and write. You can write on a piece of paper, or even write on your phone or on your laptop. Now, when you're writing a lot, it is very important to ask for feedback. Ask your readers what they think of your writings. You could use Medium to create a journal or a daily blog and ask your readers to give you feedback on specific elements of those writings. When you're ready to write, make sure that you go through the writing cycle every time you write. Start by planning, then writing, and finally editing your writings. Make sure that you incorporate your goals when you're planning your writing, and make sure that you focus on specific elements when you're editing. Do you notice that you misspell particular words all the time? Use them a lot in the next couple of writings. But focus on finding the mistakes of those particular words when you're editing your writing. Whatever you do, it is very important that you get feedback on your writing. I tell my students all the time, good that you're writing, but make sure that you post it somewhere and that you ask feedback. When you're writing book reviews, put them on Goodreads and ask your readers to give you a bit of feedback on the content of your review. Maybe you can ask one of your friends to give you some feedback, and maybe they have something you can actually work on. Whatever you do, the best way to boost your writing for the new year is by simply writing a lot. And maybe at some point you'll become such a proficient writer that you can even make some extra money from your writings. But of course, the most important thing when it comes to writing is that you have some fun. Play with your language, play with what you're doing, play with the genre, and try to experiment with things that you can incorporate in your writings. And of course, make sure that you're subscribed to my channel, because I'm going to give you some extra more tips on how to improve your writing throughout the new year. So these were my 3 tips on how to boost your writing in the new year. Start by reading more, set clear goals for the new year, and write more. If you found this video useful, please consider giving it a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments, what are you writing about this year? If you want to know more about my other videos, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so that you know when my next video will be out. For now, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in one of my next videos.